If y'all see us on Facebook feed, let us know. All right, I see us. Lovely. All right, everybody, whenever y'all ready to get it going, we can go back to the Facebook, go back to the show. Let's get it. I don't want to catch nobody off guard while they run into the restroom and you know, anything like that. So, all right, we missing one. Let me invite her again. Everybody back? Okay. Lord, come on, can't get her on. Where's she at? All right, everybody good? We're not recording yet, but we want to make sure I get Michelle in. There we go. Now we're doing it. All right, everybody. We are all here. Volume's good. Volume's good. All right, y'all. Y'all know how I like to get my little silly intro in. Hello, Michelle. How you doing? Everybody's volume good? Everybody off mute?
All Hello, right. I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. Amber, you with us?
Yes.
All right. We about to get started. Let's get it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to I am your host, Tyrone Bridges. Let's get it. Welcome, everybody. We have a full panel of guests, repeat offenders on the show. And the next leadership of the city of Ypsilanti here. Let this intro fade on out. I have to put this in the air real quick. My name is Tyrone Bridges. I am the host of I Thought You Knew, and I have some super fantastic guests on the show. Starting off at our City of Ypsilanti mayoral candidates for the City of Ypsilanti that replied to our show, we would like to welcome, starting off with Nicole. Nicole, please introduce yourself, and then we're going to go to Amber.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Brown, and I am running for the office of mayor in the city of Ypsilanti. I currently serve as one of the Ward 1 representatives, as well as Mayor Pro Tem, and have done so for the last 8 years. So thanks for having us, Tyrone.
All righty. Next, Amber, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Fellows. I am the nonpartisan unaffiliated candidate. And thank you, Tyrone, for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here. I'm a 20-year resident of Ypsilanti. I'm an ENEMU alum, and I've had 18 years of experience as a renter in a majority renter city. It's 70% majority renter here. I've been involved in a number of city commissions since 2016, and I have been a chair of a couple of those commissions. And I'm excited to be here to talk about ideas and issues.
Awesome. Now let's go to Ward City of Ypsilanti Ward 1 candidates. Let's start with the lovely lady, Miss Michelle King.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michelle King. I am a lifelong resident of Ypsilanti, and I'm new to politics, and I'm running for City Council, Ward 1.
All righty. Mr. Chance, sir.
Hello, my name is Brian Jones Chance. I am currently one of the Ward 1 representatives for the City of Ypsilanti. I am a 6th of 7 generations member of the City of Ypsilanti, and very proud to have served as long as I have done, and hope to continue.
All right. And let's go to the, let me put this disclaimer out there early. Desiree, she said she's going to join us if she can. She had a previous engagement. I won't hold that against her, but you know, I like to put that out there. And I want to allow her opponent to introduce herself, Ms. Harris.
My name is Shantae Harris. I am a Washtenaw resident, lifelong, grew up in Washtenaw County. I've been living in Ypsilanti, homeowners over 6 years, so pretty excited about that. Graduated from EMU for my undergraduate. I came back from Toledo and finished my undergraduate at Eastern Michigan, where both my parents went back in the day, 19. And yeah, I did my graduate work there. So I'm excited. I'm a newcomer, nonpartisan for City Council Ward 3, but I'm really excited to serve and get involved with our City of Ypsilanti. So thank you.
Awesome. So let's start with our mayoral candidates right now, because I know Nicole is on a very tight schedule, but if you'd like to stay as long as you like, look here, I have no timeline, I have no structure, I have no note cards, no questions, pre-questions. So if anybody have already asked me, what are you going to ask us about? I'm going to ask you guys, you lovely people, about the spirit that you have for the city in which you choose to serve. And they're going to be off the cuff questions, no disrespect. But we know what type of city that you guys choose to lead in. And we know that no one voice makes the city move. We know it takes several voices. So with that being said, let's start off with our mayoral candidates. Since Nicole went first, we're going to yield it over to Amber and let us hear, you know, about your campaign and what do you feel that you choose to bring to the city of Ypsilanti once when you become mayor, if you're elected?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the spirit of Ypsilanti is something all of us care about, and something I've been meditating a lot, especially since the pandemic. And the reason why I decided to join this this selection cycle is because I am interested in shifting away from kind of a status quo politics that has been going on in Ypsilanti for a while now, that is based on defeat and despair and kind of like very conventional processes of beefing up our systems of punishment and social control instead of bringing in, you know, working community-driven solutions that would actually support the health, wellness, and well-being of most people in Ypsilanti. So I'm here to talk about specifically broadening power away from City Hall to bring in more people into the political process. I'm here to talk about political and economic autonomy through various ways, but specifically through reparations. And I'm here to talk about housing justice, because Ypsilanti is a community that has the highest percentage of renter households. It's 70%, 66 to 70%. And we have a landlord monopoly here that's not being challenged. So that is another thing that I care about as someone that's been in the rental market for a long time and has peers and friends in the rental market. So yeah, these are the issues that I'm here to talk about today. And thank you for having me.
All righty. And look, we have Desiree finally joined us, and I already gave him your excuse, your note for being tardy, but it's cool. Nicole, would you like to go first, or would you like to go ahead and have Desiree give her introduction? Or how would you want to do this?
I mean, I will, defer to you. It's your show. I mean, if you want me to go, since Amber,
Desiree, you don't mind waiting to let her get her spiel out first, and then I'll come back to you and let you have the floor, okay? All right, cool. Go ahead, Nicole.
all right, thank you. So yeah, my reason for running for mayor at this point in time, there's several really. I grew up in Ypsilanti. I spent most of my life here. I attended EMU for both my undergraduate and graduate degrees. And really, I'm a social worker. And so I started off doing, organizing and working with folks around outreach. So when I graduated from EMU, I was the outreach coordinator for Ozone House at the drop-in center right here in downtown Ypsi. And we would, go to different businesses to locate safe places and spaces for young people. And I got really connected to some of our local elected officials, as well as, community organizers and leaders of the nonprofits that were local in the area. And eventually, was approached based on, my action in the community to run for city council for the first ward seat when the previous person was moving out of the district. And so, I never saw myself in politics. I don't really call myself a politician because I'm not. I'm just someone who, I have a heart for people and working alongside people and engaging people. And so that's why I ran, and that's why I'm still here. There have been difficult times being a council member thus far. I mean, it's been 7.5, almost 8 years, but the commitment is still there because we've seen some positive change. But it's also time for some innovation and transformational change. And so I think that this is the time for, me to step forward in that leadership based upon having the initial experience as a council member and as someone who was a renter and now is a homeowner in the city. So the things that I want to focus on at this time, of course, is affordable and accessible housing. I want to continue destigmatizing mental health. Again, social worker, that is a big issue for me. Focusing on, harm reduction and decarceration, as well as empowering our young people, and let's really focusing on safety and the violence issues that we're seeing, particularly on the south side of Ypsi, but also that we see trickle out into the rest of the city as well as into the township, because we have a lot of retaliatory things that happen across those borders and those lines. And despite the fact that there's townships surrounding us, when people hear Ypsi, we're one Ypsi, right? It doesn't matter what your zip code is. And so I really want to function as a leader that can work collaboratively across those lines with not just my colleagues on city council, but the township trustees and our county board of commissioners, as well as our state legislators, to make sure that Ypsi has a voice in the fight and that we get the things that we need. Some of the other things are, I think I said housing access, and then also advocating for us when it comes to infrastructure so that we can get some of the things that, residents have been talking about for years done. So there's a litany of things that, we need to do in the city. And I think that with renewed energy as well as experience, it's a really good balance, and it goes hand in hand to go into this role now at a really pivotal point for the city. So thanks again for having me.
Great. Desiree, please introduce yourself and let us hear you and what you are running for, so we can go ahead and keep this show moving here.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Desiree Simmons, running for City Council in Ward 3. And the question is, why am I running? So I'm running because I believe that I have a history of experience already that has shown success in terms of being able to connect things that the community puts forward in terms of needs and things that we want to see happening, and being able to connect those kind of things happening just like out grassroots, out in community, with policy pushes and ways of also uplifting issues into the spotlight that haven't necessarily given been in the spotlight before. An example of that is just thinking about the legal system, thinking about, the roles of judges and why we should hold judges accountable and what that looks like. And so I have experience doing that, and see that being on council can be a continuation and deepening of that work, as well as being in a legislative space to be able to really push policies that impact people's everyday lives, as well as putting forward things that are a strategy for what we want to see happen in the city, that will help us long-term address these needs, so that we don't have to only focus on Band-Aid solutions. And, also speaking to the building the relationships with the city, with our surrounding areas, as well as with our elected officials up and down the ticket, and having everybody understand their stake in supporting the needs of Ypsilanti, and what that looks like.
Awesome, awesome. And we're gonna roll right over there to Ashanti and let her go ahead and step in and give her spew, and then we're gonna roll to the Ward 1 candidates. You're muted. I'm sorry.
That would help.
Right.
I am running because I really felt like it was important to be involved. When I first moved to Ypsilanti, I joined the Parks and Recreation Commission
Mhm.
as kind of a first step. My background before I went in and started working at some of my things was a degree in Parks and Recreation Management. And so I really wanted to build up the parks. I feel they're a powerful space for young people. I remember growing up, it was Mitchell Elementary School over there right next to Colonial Square. And there was such strong activities, even in the school parks, with arts and crafts and people coming and teaching and storytelling. It was just wonderful. And you don't hear about things like that where someone comes in from the community and spends time always with young people and showing them new things that they might not have known about before. So I've just always loved the parks. They're meaningful to me. I've spent a lot of time. And then as I traveled and went to other places and saw, I wanted to just be part of making sure the City of Ypsilanti parks were as wonderful and welcoming as they could be. Then the part with getting involved with city council, which I'm really excited about, was really just in discussions with my neighbors. And it was really, they wanted to have their voice told. They wanted to be sure that they were informed with decisions and that their voice was being heard. And that's something that I do a lot as at work. I'm more of a facilitator for getting things from one place to the other with communications, and I have a strong management skill. And I think it's important to have community engagement. I mean, it was something that I always learned growing up. The communities that I were in have changed quite a bit. That I spent a lot of time in my youth, such as Inkster and other areas. And I just really wanted to be sure I was doing all I can and not sitting on the backgrounds. And I felt as if in some of the conversations that I was having, I was very passive. And I think that if you don't step forward and do things, then you can't really complain in the background about it. But there are some people that just don't feel comfortable doing that. And my hope is that I could be that person for them to move it forward. So it was really on my areas are community involvement, keeping people informed on decisions, and transparency is a very big issue for me. Financial stability, I'm big. I work with federal dollars all the time. I understand how things change unexpectedly, but the bottom line is we need to be sure that to do anything else that we have a strong financial footing. So I felt it was an area I could work with. And then it was really, it started with the housing accessibility, and that was a little bit different from affordable housing for me. It was really It's not that I don't care about affordable housing, I do, but I also think we need to take care of the neighborhoods and homes that are here and build those up and take care of those before we start doing anything else. People need help doing that. There's some people that are struggling, and there's things out there that we have to work together to get those taken care of. So I really want to focus on what's here now and then build in what we need. I have ideas for Water Street, but the general view that I'm going with is let's take a look at our homes and neighborhoods that are here and how we can make them better. And then infrastructure. And that's really just, I think everyone says that because it's always a need in every city. So we have speed bumps that are needed, trees that are going. We've got this bridge over here that we have to do. And these are things that every city deals with. And we just have to keep working through them. And it's just how we're going to do it for our city.
All right. Now, before I toss it over to Michelle, because ladies first, of course, and then we're going to go to Brian, I want to make sure we don't try to cover everything that the city has, the ailments or whatever that we're going to be battling with all in one spew. So mind you, we got 7 people on this show. And I know we don't have a time barrier, but a lot of people want to get their intros in, and then we're going to get going. We really going to get going. Trust me, we're going to hit them areas. Michelle, please.
So first, I want to say again, thanks for having me on the show. I do have a time barrier. I have another engagement, so I'm not sure how long I'll be here today. But just to give you guys a little background about me. Again, I'm a lifelong resident of Ypsilanti. And after hearing Nicole, I spoke to Nicole before, and I would just say, our stories seem very similar. I never initially really had any goals to be a politician, but a few people came to me because they see the work that I have done in the community and just with people in general, and they suggested that I run. And at first I said no, but after thinking and having many life events this year happen, I chose to say yes because I want to be a bigger part of my community. So just to give you a little bit about myself, I am a social worker. I graduated with my bachelor's degree from Eastern Michigan University, and then I went on to University of Michigan to get my master's degree. I have experience working with Washtenaw County in the juvenile diversion program. I've also worked for a crisis line, the 24/7 crisis line. I'm a former Girl Scout leader, and I'm a mother. I have 5 children. And with saying yes, I decided my platform being, just like a lot of people have already said, housing. Housing is a big issue. I'm currently a renter, and I am in the process of becoming a homeowner right now, but it is difficult just because prices are extremely high. So I also, for my platform, is opportunities for youth. When I was growing up, it was so many opportunities out here, and now I see a lack of those opportunities, and even stuff down to the Gus Macker and just different things to get children engaged. We don't have those programs out here. So again, let me go back to housing. I think there's racial equity in housing for especially Black people. Like I said, for me, I am not a homeowner. I have been renting for a very long time. And so another part of me running is to show my kids that they can do something like this, and they don't have to wait until they're my age to have these goals and aspirations. And I'm a social worker at a local high school, and that also pushed me to run because I knew I could be a role model for them as well.
All righty. Mr. Brian Jones-Chance, sir.
Yeah, so like I said before, I'm currently one of the Ward 1 council representatives. And I guess, like a lot of other people, someone asked when the position came up if I would consider applying. And I'm a business owner. I own a real estate brokerage and asset management firm in downtown Ypsi in Ward 1, and I also own the state's first Black-owned brewery in Depot Town, and also the only Black-owned business in Depot Town, unfortunately. And so I wasn't sure, time-wise, if it really made sense. And I was also serving on the Downtown Development Authority. But that experience gave me a lot of insight into kind of the workings of local government. The DDA has a lot of control over things you would never even think about. And that's part of well, I guess I'll say that's part of the danger of authorities if they're not well managed or taken care of or looked after. But that sort of pushed me into saying yes, because I realized just how much there was that could actually be done in the city in a position like that. I think before I really thought, Ypsi City Council, I mean, what's really the point? I mean, how much does the council really do versus what the staff does and things like that. But my eyes were definitely opened, and my family being in Ward 1 and on the south side, a predominantly Black neighborhood for 7 generations. I mean, we've been here just about as long as Ypsi has. My great-grandfather helped in the fight against urban renewal. And so I felt like, a sense of duty and responsibility to give back to Ypsi. It's a place that's given so much to me. The South Side in particular has given a lot to me. And so I felt like it was time to step up and do some things and be useful. And then I found out that I actually could be useful. We've made some meaningful progress in my time on council, and things as minor as speed bumps, which residents have been asking for almost 2 decades. And, as consequential as an almost adequate police force. These are, things that had previously been enjoyed primarily, if not exclusively, by others in the community. And right now I'm running because I really don't feel that we can afford to forfeit our progress. We can't slow the acceleration towards some of our future objectives, like improved housing affordability, safety, and some truly reparative and restorative economic justice. When COVID started, I had gotten a little irked by some things going on in the DDA, and we decided to form a minority business group. And that has had a lot of carryover into how I see, our housing policy, our zoning policy here in the city. There are a lot of vestiges of our racist past. And I think we live in a place that is uniquely able to address those. I don't think you're going to find a lot of daylight between any of us on this panel. We all might disagree about how to go about making changes, but generally speaking, we don't disagree on what those changes are that need to be made, like what the problems are. And that's something I think is unique about Ypsi. As someone who grew up here, you kind of grow up thinking that's normal. And it wasn't until I went to college at Western that I actually had a culture shock. I was, if you can imagine growing up in Ypsi and then going to see a bunch of Bush Cheney stickers, you would be pretty shocked. So we've got a lot of gifts here, and I think this is a great time for us to capitalize on those and really catapult ourselves forward.
All right, Brian, I don't mean to pick on you, but I like for you to look in the camera like these lovely ladies have done.
Oh,
they looking right in the camera. I know you're busy.
Let me see if I can.
Let's give the same undivided attention to this conversation. But look, let's have 2 quick conversations about, well, nothing's quick about politics. But when you got an elephant in the room, we're talking about the elephant in the room. There's 2 elephants in the room. The first one is reparations. What does reparation look like to you in your most shortest term? And number 2, what, if you can describe, has the city of Ypsilanti done for Black-owned businesses? I'm not talking about LGBTQ plus community. I'm not talking about no other race. I'm talking about Black African Americans. So y'all can take the first question or the second question or take both. And I'm not going to pick one, but whoever want to start first and whoever got to win it to answer this question, please raise your hand and go for it. You ain't got to do the Zoom. Raise your hand and just go for it. Mind you, you got 6 other people coming behind you. Who want to take that question? Everybody, okay, go ahead, Amber.
And then I'll go.
Go ahead, girl.
Yeah. So this is something that I am talking about in my campaign, and I care about for multiple reasons. Ypsilanti is one of the last cities in Michigan that has a historic Black neighborhoods, basically, you know, communities that are established and have been here for a long time, but that is changing rapidly. In the last 5-10 years, people have been talking about gentrification, but that didn't really enter into the city discourse until around 2017. And our city officials at the time, which, you know, my opponent, Nicole Brown, was a part of that commission or that council, did not necessarily want to talk about gentrification, even though it was impacting Black communities in particular here, Black residents, but also many other residents as well. That conversation, the debate is over. Gentrification is here, it is real. 2020 census revealed there's been a reduction in Black residents in Ypsilanti that's significant. And so to me, that just speaks of not only maybe criminal neglect on the part of our council, but also just over and over and over policy failures and like places that could have changed that didn't have change. And since 2016, I have been a part of the city government in the role of a commissioner and the chair of a commission, trying to forward conversations about gentrification, about racial inequity, about basically our systemic harms that are from the municipal level all the way up to the federal level. And in addition to that, I think besides reparations being the right thing to do, it is also the only way we can reasonably believe that Black residents in Ypsilanti and beyond can have the political autonomy and the economic autonomy to really fully participate in voting rights, in industry, in job creation, workforce. The only way that we're able to get to the next step, that we're on equal and equitable footing, is if the harms from the past are repaired for. And just, I mean, I know that a lot of people in this Zoom chat is going to, know this very well, but I just want to point out that basically there's been a huge wealth transfer because of our government. And besides the local issues, which, Brian Jones-Chance talked about urban renewal, that is one of the issues. The I-94 highway was built through Black neighborhoods and businesses. Redlining is a local issue. Over policing. And I think the systemic racism on the municipal level even gets to the COVID-19 response of the last couple of years, which devastated Black residents in Ypsilanti in particular. But besides that, from the local level and up, slavery, Jim Crow, the racial terrorism of our government, which is built upon a white supremacist framework, has been extracting labor, extracting fear, which has been very profitable. $60 trillion to $111 trillion of wealth has been extracted from Black Americans. And in the US, there is $90 trillion just sitting in people's bank accounts, personal bank accounts.
I wish it was
So
mine.
Yeah. So this is just, I don't understand how we can have a conversation about equity without redressing the harms of the past. We can't.
And we would love to do it on a bigger platform than this. We'd have all day talking about it, probably all year.
Yeah.
But for the sake of time, I want to pitch that off to Nicole. Nicole, you heard Amber, and she on point. I can't sit there and lie. I mean, she's saying that there's some problems. Go ahead, Nicole.
So yeah, I don't disagree with Amber about the problems. I will say I'll rebuttal the statement about me being on council and not believing in gentrification. That was never a part of my rhetoric or my conversation. We're a body of 7 people, and so when things are voted up and down, it's not based on one individual person. So I won't be calling out one individual person on something that happened as a group. So one of the things that we've done specifically though as a council, and I have supported, is with our cannabis industry in Ypsilanti, our social equity ordinance. And so every entity in Ypsilanti that has a permit has to have a social equity plan attached to it. And we're 2 to 3 of those businesses are Black owned who received their permits, even though Michigan is an anti-affirmative action state. We still put that in place in the ordinance to make sure that we get additional support or additional points given, like when applying for a permit. So that is directly correlated to support of the Black community and Black businesses. The neighborhood enterprise zone, so that historically Black neighborhood in the city, I live in one of them, Heritage Park. And so neighborhood enterprise zones, not to get into too much of the jargon, is something that was created to make sure that if there were individuals who wanted to make improvements on their homes, they wouldn't have to leave or move, could do so and have support with their taxes being frozen at the level that it was currently at for a certain amount of years as they put equity back into their home to improve, not move. So that is a direct, decision to try to keep folks in their neighborhood, keep them in their houses that have been passed down to them, by generations, instead of seeking housing elsewhere because they're looking for improvements that they cannot make, on their own to their homes. The youth mini grant program is something that I initiated in my 3rd year on council, and many of those grants have gone to youth serving organizations that directly work with young people who are from the south side of Ypsilanti, who frequent places like Parkridge Community Center, Ozone House, who needed additional support to keep young people out of the streets and out of gang activity and doing positive things, with other young folks, to have support from trusting adults and caring adults, because we know that is one of the things that can save our youth, right? One caring adult can change the direction and the narrative from a young person, pivoting into adverse or negative behavior. In addition to that, during COVID, although yes, it is certainly true that the Black community was impacted the most by COVID, the city with the least amount of revenue, we actually did the most to support our community when it came down to pouring out money from a budget that is already tiny to barrier busters, for instance, to support folks who needed help with like utility assistance. We partnered with EMU to make sure that we made masks for folks who did not have access to like the medical grade masks, but wanted to make sure they had something as they were maneuvering through the community. And so there are little things here and there that are happening. No, we have not done some grandiose like reparations plan, but the people on council, including myself, helping to lead the way, have made sure to pour back resources into the Black community and the best that we can with the limited resources and limited opportunities that we do have to do so. In terms of how I feel about reparations, I believe that we deserve reparations. And I think that in any which way that we can start that process, that's important. And that's why some of these other pieces have been put in place over the past few years to start moving us towards some of that economic justice and that racial equity, knowing that nothing's going to happen overnight. So thank you.
All right.
Can I do a short response?
We're gonna yield the floor over. This time we're gonna cross it back over to Desiree because she didn't get a chance to get off into the substance of the major beginning of this conversation. So Desiree, you, and then Ms. Harris, and then we're gonna go back to Michelle and also Brian. So what we're not gonna do is we're not gonna gang up on one another or even gang up on one another's comments. I don't do that shit. I don't play that. I shut the show down. Everybody be off of it. I'll plug it. I'll scrub the whole thing. What we need dialogue. We can't show leadership if we going at each other's throat. Somebody said arguments and all that is good for politics. I beg to differ, because you get lost in the words that people say. People come up with dictionary words, but when the question is asked, follow the question, stay on task. Forgive me, Desiree, go ahead.
So, yeah, I just want to say, so when thinking about reparations, I think it's important. We already can see, I know as Amber was laying out the situation, like really clear spaces and lines where we need to focus. Housing obviously is a big one, and it's such a big reason why we're seeing the drop in population of Black folks, and also was also a little bit of the disbursement across the city as well. And so, you know, needing to address housing, both affordable housing, and also opportunities for folks to be able to enter into home ownership again, or maybe for the first time. I think that those things are important, and having programs in place to help people to attain those kinds of goals will be really important. Also, in terms of the businesses, you know, as we talked about, you know, the business district also being decimated. So we do need to think about that economic wealth and mobility. And when we think about how we support businesses, you know, I was just thinking the other day about how we had a couple of Black-owned businesses that started during the pandemic downtown, and they're gone, right? So there was a cheesecake 24 cheesecakery, and then Lot G also. And I think about, like, how are we helping to keep people in those spaces? And is that tied into the property ownership as well, whether that makes it hard for people to be able to maintain during times like a pandemic? But, you know, how is the city helping to support, you know, new entrepreneurs and folks coming into our, you know, opening storefronts, which is what we want to have happen. But it's no good to have people come into a space and not set them up for success. And so, you know, we need to have long-term a long-term plan for recruiting, you know, both building up the ability for folks to be able to open a business, recruiting them into our space, and then supporting them in being able to, you know, to retain them in that space. And the other thing I will say, you know, as part of helping them to get into that space is to think about education. And while we, you know, the city council isn't able to directly determine all these things in terms of the, you know, the school board and our education, but we do know that we need to partner up around the school debt, and really push the state, like, to see this as a reparative opportunity for them, so that our school district can actually invest back into the students and the teachers and the staff, and so that we can have the kind of system we need so that we are growing our future right here in Ypsilanti, and that they know that they have a strong education, that they are going to be able to have a really strong opportunity in a job or a career market, you know, that they're not only, you know, able to have, you know, kind of like starter jobs that are just like, oh, I'm here for a couple of months and then I go here, but they're actually able to build long-term skills. And that might also look like apprenticeship programs in different ways that we are introducing people to what's possible. And that then once they have that strong job and they can stay here if they want to, that they can actually live and they don't have to, so I think that these things are actually connected. And I think that there could be other things that we think about, reparations. I think it's all these services, but I also think it is direct payment. And we can't also ignore that as part of the reparations talk. Where that comes from, what that looks like, is a whole longer conversation, but we need to push the issue. And I also think that the more that it happens within local municipalities, the more it pushes the pressure to happen at the state and the federal level, which is spaces where we know there's a lot more resources and a lot more harm that has happened as well.
Right. Ms. Harris?
So I've heard, I love these types of situations because you learn so much. Some of the programs that Nicole Brown talked about, I didn't know about the Black Business Association that Brian Jones talked about. I think it's very important and they're very positive programs. And I think that the problem is that we have to be sure that we're getting that knowledge out, that people know that these resources are available to them, because I'm impressed hearing about it. And, I've been deep diving and getting and talking to people, and I wasn't aware, and they sound wonderful. And I think we just have to talk to people and let them know these resources are available, and kind of help them, direct them to the tools such as this Black Business Association, and then what values can be found from the Small Business Association too, that'll help new Black-owned businesses and old with kind of helping with some of the business skills to help propel their businesses to success. And I think we really have to just be sure that awareness and outreach happens. In addition, I agree reparations has to happen, and there's a lot even with homeownership, just poor health decisions and other things that come out. I think it's at the state level, but state level is not going to be aware if we don't talk about it and continue to talk about it. I don't know that some of our funds has to go to helping with some of these social services here that we're in desperate need of, but we have to let people be aware that there is a situation here, and there are some people that we need to identify, and how that happens I'm not quite sure of, but I think it's going to we need to move it to the state level with our relationships. So thank you.
All righty, I'm gonna slide over to Michelle unless Brian wanna slide in.
Oh, I'm happy to wait.
All right, Michelle.
So like everybody else has stated, I believe it's an issue. It's a lack of education, apprenticeships, and common knowledge in spaces that promote individuals to become business owners. And we know part of that problem is exactly what Ashanti just stated. In some areas, we have no knowledge of the programs that are available to us. So I think that is one huge way to start, is to make these programs widely known to individuals so they can have better access. And also another thing, a few years ago, I worked with the West Willow Health Initiative program in West Willow. And I know that program was going to expand to come to like the South Side and to Ypsilanti in general. And I think that is also another way to provide these, help in these areas. For the West Willow Health Initiative, they had people come in and help with housing issues, rent. They helped with putting up, why can't I think? I can't even think, but handrails and bathrooms on porches and stuff like that, and just helping to maintain home ownership. So I think those programs are definitely necessary.
Mr. Chance.
Yeah, I'll bring us back to Black business ownership. I'll probably just speak about that a little bit more specifically. Yeah, there are definite barriers, and part of the reason that the Association of Businesses of Color was started was because of some things a few of us members on the Downtown Development Authority noticed. about how funds were being dispersed, about who was even applying for grants in the first place, and how quickly some applications came in, before other people could apply. And that was all exacerbated by COVID. And what then became apparent was, the need for formalized or more formalized banking relationships. A lot of Black business owners either, work through a credit union or they work through a smaller bank and don't really have the sort of relationship. I'm sorry if I'm looking to the side, like you guys are here, my camera's over
It's
here.
okay. I understand. I
Okay.
understand because I got two cameras here.
So that became really obvious that there were disparities at various levels of owning a business, from banking on to funding and financing, and just really the basic knowledge that most small business owners frankly lack about how to run a business. Most people who start small businesses know how to do the thing the business does, but they don't know how to have a business that does that thing. So what we've been focused on really is education, and advocacy. And one of the most important ways to address the disparities in Black business ownership is for us to stop trying to get better at asking for what we need and start being the people who make the decisions. And so one of the main pushes for us is, making sure that there are Black members on the DDA, for example. That's probably the most important thing. Making sure that there are Black folks on city council, that, work hard and will do the work. You can't just be anybody. But all the way to the county commission and things like that. Make sure that you have representation. Make sure that we as an organization form relationships with banks so that you get the benefit of our relationship when you go. Things like that. Now, some of these things, can't really be left up to municipal government, especially. But there's a lot of things we found that we can do for one another. And honestly, just being in fellowship sometimes and being able to talk about your common problems. And this group is open to all business owners of color. I mean, anyone on this panel could be a member, I think. So, but just sharing that shared experience sometimes is more than enough to get you through a week. And I think because we're in a minority, we don't necessarily have that strong community. And even in cases, like the brewery, for example, I'm not really counting on another Black-owned business coming to Depot Town anytime soon. I mean, this is the first one in 200 years, so I don't think there's going to be, I think I'll be waiting a while, right? And that's really sad.
Why would you think that?
A lot of that comes down to property ownership. The buildings have been in the same hands for a while. Now you can rent, and that's fine. And there are a couple of opportunities to move into spaces, but if you're not willing to, if you're a Black-owned business, your clientele is most likely also going to be Black, and that's not necessarily a place where Black people hang out. So your customers aren't even there, right? And that's really something that we need to address on a branding side for Depot Town. And then as far as the reparations part goes, not to sound defeatist, but I'm just a practical person. I don't think that we will see wholesale reparations in my lifetime. And I really don't like to see us distracting ourselves with this sort of big far off goal when there are things that we can be doing right now to start making repairs to the damage that's been done. So one of the things that I've been working on the last 18 months or so really combines housing affordability and some of this economic justice piece around business ownership. And there's two streams for that. One is through the DDA, and a group was put together and they are exploring the possibility of extending the business district through to the Heritage Park neighborhood, which is where a business district used to be before the city decided that they were slums and they were going to put a highway over it. The street I grew up on used to go all the way across to the Ford plant. And now it's a quarter of that. And there used to be all kinds of businesses. We were, really independent in a way. But in order to move traffic to downtown, we were expendable. That's piece number one. Piece number two, if I'm elected, this round is and we've sort of already gotten down in this path, is some very, I don't want to call them extreme, but they might be to some people, changes to our zoning. There will be a lot of upzoning if I have my druthers. And we will be, single family residential zoning is a segregation tool that you can use without having to use racially segregationist language. We found ways over time to make racially innocuous zoning codes and still get the segregation that we want, right? The days are numbered for that, at least in the city of Ypsilanti. And those are things that we can start right now. In fact, those are things that have already been started. Getting to the finish line is going to require the right people on the job, though.
All right. For the sake of time, I don't know if I want to throw my little spew in, because what reparations look like for me, old Southside Negro boy growing up, 668 Arbor Drive in the midst of gangs, mother of 6, didn't know where half of the meal was going to come from. And current speeded up right now to 2022. We got parents and families just like my little black ass. And forgive me for my language, because it's real. And we got all this doggone county money that's floating around here, putting it in people's pockets, millions of dollars. And we got po folk in Ypsilanti that if you was to give them $500, $100 stipends here, $100 stipends there, recognize the poorest amongst you. That's reparations to a certain degree for them, because they don't have to fight to try to save their places, like majority of them being put out of rental homes. We know what's going on. Now, without me going on my soapbox, y'all know how I feel. We can have a good conversation like this, but everybody can't be everybody's instructor, because some of the things that everybody have said, I have some disagreements with, from a homegrown buyer hospital baby, and I have some agreements with. I've been here for a long time. How many people can beat 53 years at Ipsy? Thank you. All I was trying to tell you is this. There's another elephant in the room. That's a bigger elephant that can't nobody say nothing about right now. But as parents, I would like for you to look at this situation. There was an 11-year-old girl, autistic girl, abducted in the city of Ypsilanti, raped, did all kind of wrong, held hostage, and then was dropped off in the city of Ypsilanti Township like a piece of trash. In this midst of reform in the police department reduction, what do a situation look like by you being in your position if you get elected? And God forbid, if we have another baby abducted in the city of Ypsilanti with no police chief, no support to the detective. It's only one detective, the Lonesome Ranger's sister out there. And everybody's saying reform. So without using your reform voices, stop talking about reform. Talk to me about safety when it comes down to our babies. I heard somebody say they got 4 kids, 5 kids. I heard somebody say they got 1. You got cousins. You got nephews and nieces. Brian, I know you got some little people up under your wings too. As a man, I'll be outraged about that. But what I haven't heard nobody talk about what's happening to our City of Ypsilanti Police Department. But without putting your reform hat on, please let's have this conversation, because this is like the largest elephant in the room outside of that doggone broken down Depot Town bridge. If it was some black folk in that doggone Depot Town, Mr. Chance, if it was some black businesses that can break some barriers, maybe we can find some funding down there to help get that bridge repaired. But it's too many doggone businesses down there that got that tight money, and they've been getting looked out over hands over feet for so many years with no checks and balances. So back to my point without getting off of subject, that 11-year-old baby, that's our 11-year-old autistic child. That's every one of y'all's child. How can you, as an elected official, help your city to do better when your police department, chief of police, and the rest of them is going away, per news report? Somebody want to jump in? And please, y'all, everybody got short time.
So because I do have a prior engagements, I do want to start. So one thing I think about safety in Ypsilanti, one issue I have had a problem with for many years, I stay right around the corner from the Ypsilanti Police Department. And I know I've called the police before and they have not responded. They have not responded. And another thing is, I think it starts with unlocking the police department. I don't understand why the doors of the police department are locked. And it's not like it's locked after hours. It's locked during the days of the week during business hours. So that, I think, is where safety starts at. As a mother of 5 kids, I would hate for something like that to happen to one of my children. So I think it really starts too with the police department, but the community as well, bringing the village back. I think those are the two important things. I think police officers need to be back in the streets, making themselves visible, being friendly to the constituents, not just being here to police, but being here. Again, I am from Ypsilanti, Michigan, as well as my family. I remember a time when my mom said when she grew up, the police would be at the basketball courts playing with people. So I think that's where it starts, bringing the police back in the community, not to police, but really unlocking those doors. Because I would hate for a situation to happen and you cannot get into the doors of the police station. I sat there before for at least 15 minutes. 15 minutes, could not get in, press the button, could not get anybody on. And for me, that was an issue. So I think that's where it starts at, unlocking the doors and being back in the community.
Ms. Harris?
Yeah, I'll jump right in because I agree 100%. It's really, we need to build up our communities, our village. I mean, back as a child, you were outside. If something happened and you weren't there, someone was talking to they were first of all talking to me, but they were also talking to my parents. Everyone saw what was going on and kind of had their ear to what was happening. And that was in my community as a child over in Colonial Square. That was in my communities in Inkster. You knew what your children were doing, and times have changed so much. And, you know, I'm not quite sure of all the reasons why, but we need to talk to people and really just, do you see what's happening next door, around the corner, you know, 5 blocks in the next ward, because that's going to come over to you. So it's not that different. So I'm on community involvement. The police used to come to our classrooms in elementary school and talk to us. They were out there sitting on a porch, talking to my father, talking to my grandparents, letting them know, you know, are you aware that this situation happened? So they were kind of a voice along with the neighborhood, and we worked together. And, you know, I know a lot is People tell me all the time when I ask what's changed, they said, oh, this was always happening. It's just social media has run it up so you're more aware. Well, we need to be aware and we need to take action. So we can't just read it and say that's terrible and move on. We have to take some steps. And yeah, our police department, we need to get people there that, have the same, I'm not quite sure what the word is, ideology, about being part of a community and helping and supporting and being visible. I think that's really important. So.
All right, going to Nicole, we're going around the circle. Yo, I'm sorry, forgive
Yeah.
me, Brian.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in because I do have to leave in a few as well. I think this is something that, it's a difficult topic to broach because people it's very polarizing and folks are on both sides of this issue around policing. But the thing that I've been talking about for years, and since I've been on council, is like there is a both and approach to this. So we talk about, rebuilding community and people, actually being neighbors and like understanding, what's happening with the kids next door and reporting back, and what Ashanti talked about, what Michelle was talking about when they were growing up. And that's wonderful. But the onus can't only be on the community, nor can the onus only be on law enforcement. It comes down to like a both and, right? A merger. And so pouring resources into the community, into other mechanisms that are not police enforced are going to be really important. So supreme felons, the interrupters, survivor speaks, the things that they're doing, in the community, coming into the neighborhoods, going to the parks, having events, talking to everybody about how do we look out for one another without having to invest in license plate readers to be the mechanism that helps us, right? How do we keep it from becoming a police state, and instead of partnering together to do the work together? We know that we cannot just remove police overnight and say, hey, I'm going to be the mass crusader who's going to come out and help everyone when something happens, when someone is abducted or when shots are fired. That is not reality. We cannot say that is the thing that we need to do. But what we can do is hold police accountable, make sure that we're taking resources and reallocating them to other spaces like those organizations, like Supreme Felons, like the Interrupters, like, Survivor Speaks, and all these other orgs that are doing really great things in the community, and work together. So the police department can't be open because we don't have enough staff for the building to be open all day long. That's why the police department is not open. People are not responding to calls because they're going from call to call to call to call to call all day. Now, I'm not here to cape for police, but those are human beings as well. And when that's your job and you're going from call to call to call, do we not expect for something bad to happen when they're on the next call and everybody's burnt out? Absolutely, right? So again, it is a both and. I don't think that we should be pouring money into just police because that's not the only mechanism that is there to work. And it wasn't built to service us in the way that we utilize them. It's built to do what it's doing. But it is the mechanism that we have right now. And there are a lot of people, despite what folks want to say, that do feel like having the police show up is going to help them, even though they're intimidated. It's hard to fathom, but it's a reality that if something happens in your front yard, you're not calling Nicole, you're calling the police, right? And so if we don't have adequate policing right now, that is an issue. When this issue with this young lady occurred, I talked to the detective directly. And one of the biggest issues of solving the case, even though she's amazing, is that there is a lack of support for her to do that. One person can't be held accountable for solving every single issue that has happened within this community. So what are we saying? We don't want that detective to do their job because they're a police officer to help find justice for someone who was harmed? Like, we got to have a conversation that's about all of it and not just a part of it. And so there is a community piece. There is a piece about moving away from tapping into police to solve our problems. But there is a piece of that is the mechanism that we have right now. What we need to do is hold folks accountable and create change and change the narrative around what they do. So put them in the community, have them meeting folks, give incentives for people to come here and want to be here and commit themselves to here so that we have people who actually love this community like we love the community. And then we can move our way into using resources to do other things that don't involve them. Like, I've been talking about throughout the entire campaign, a non-police crisis response team. So if somebody has something going on that is not to be, taken care of by police because they are not trained mental health providers. They're not trained to show up to someone's house when there are issues with someone having maybe a mental health crisis. You have folks who have that training to do that work and can be welcomed in instead of having police show up to do that. So we need to put them in the place of where they belong, as well as hold them accountable, and then hold ourselves accountable to building community and getting out here and working together with these other organizations who are doing really great work already so we can solve some of these problems.
All right, I'm gonna go to the next person will be Desiree because she has to get going. I respected y'all have y'all prior engagement. I really appreciate y'all for coming. Stick with me. We can still continue to have this conversation for those who can. Go ahead, Desiree.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. This will be my last question. I'm gonna have to go jump to pick up my kid. I'll try to keep it quick. I'm trying to think of how to put it all together. I mean, one is I'll say, I'm not a reform-minded person. I'm reading this here. I don't know, y'all might not be able to see it. No more police. This is what I'm reading right now. And it starts off talking about, violent situations where police are around, but they haven't stopped the violence from being enacted on people. And so we have to recognize that certain groups of people are awarded total protection by police and some are not. I'm part of some work happening right now at the Washtenaw Equity Partnership, looking at front end and prevention work. And just did some surveys with folks who have been system impacted here in the county. And one of the things that they said over, a lot of them were like, yes, we know the police have to exist. We just wish they basically did everything different than how they do. Like, we need the police, but we wish that they were in community and friendly. We need police, but we wish that they didn't shake us down because we were hanging out in the park. We need police, but we wish they didn't pull us over and then whatever. So I think that the thing is, it's hard because I recognize that because we also see that the police say, oh, if there's an issue, you don't take care of it, you call us to take care of it. Well, what we know is at the end of the day, when people talk about safety, it doesn't need to be the police officer's eyes, it needs to be somebody's eyes. It can be any of us in community who step out. Outside my house, there was what I would call a domestic violence disturbance. A person telling somebody to get away from them, leave, yelling, right? I didn't call the police. I went out there and I said, hey, what's going on? To be another person. And that de-escalated that situation in and of itself, just by there being another person, another eye, somebody who's willing to speak out. I'm not trying to say that the community has to take on all of the burden, but what I do know is that even in the situation that you laid out, Tyrone, more police, we could have a full police department. That poor little girl still would have been abducted. The police are a late stage solution. They could try to solve that case, but that little girl still would be traumatized, harmed, and we would all still be feeling in our hearts for her. And so we also have to know that there's things we need to do at the front end in order to really deal. When we talk about what makes crime go down, what we see, the data shows not only nationally, we can look at the data right here. When we put more money into the police department, crime statistics go up. They don't go down. This is like the area where we seem to forget how statistics work. We say, oh, they say they can only solve 7% of cases or whatever it is. And we say, oh, that's just because you're underfunded. In no other space will we say, okay, somebody gives us this kind of level. Teachers, my sister, a teacher, they don't get away with saying, oh, we are underfunded, there's not enough of us. We blame them for everything that happens with our children in our schools. So it baffles my mind why they get a pass when they don't do what we want them to do in terms of bringing safety. What we hear is that we're not going to be able to do it. We can come after the fact, right? And so to me, we need to not only be thinking about, I understand that, what people have comfort, but also people actually seem to want something else. They actually want a different kind of presence in their neighborhoods than what we have. But all that we have right now is police. So to me, it's a different conversation. To me, it's about, how is it that somebody is, eyes and ears out, that we know where to go and who to call. And also, that we have the resources to support people once they are in a violent situation that actually is healing. And it's not just, okay, now you're a victim and we need your statement, but what happens for the long-term mental health for this child and for her family? Who's wrapping up? We know the police also don't tend to do that it's also other groups that come in to help support victims of violence. So the police aren't there to help us with like how we deal with violence. The police aren't there to stop violence. So what is it that we're fighting for? So I think the elephant in the room is that we need a whole new conversation about what does safety mean to us? What are we willing to do to become more safe? And how do we align the municipal services that we have in order to promote that? One of the things we know that happens also is that even putting up bright lights in a place, that brings more safety than putting a police officer in their car in that corner. Those are things that we can do that actually promote more safety in spaces. So we need to be clear about what we're looking to do and go forward from there. Thank y'all for having me. Bye.
I want to throw this in there. Hopefully she can catch it on the recording. But the last time I got a chance to intervene in a domestic violence situation was in the townhouses. This guy was straddling his girlfriend. He was throwing blows on her. I went to help her out. This black man pulled a gun on me. So in certain neighborhoods, you can go out and say, hey, what are you doing? In certain neighborhoods, you will have that respect. But in certain neighborhoods, you can't just go out there and think you're going to go out there and make a fuss about someone doing their thing, and they will actually turn the gun on you. So that's important to realize, because we can't joke ourselves. In every area of Ypsilanti, they don't treat you the same way. So on the South Side, try to intervene in issues like that, and you'll get a different response. And I'm just being honest because I was raised on the South Side. So the next person was Amber. I wanted to make sure she get her spew in. Sorry it took so long, but I wanted to make sure you get a chance to comment.
It's all good. Thank you. I really do appreciate this space to have this conversation, because this is actually what I'm interested to do if I were to get into the role of mayor, is to have more spaces like this to talk about these topics and to talk about it in a broad way. We don't actually have accountability for our police department. I know that Nicole said that, we need to keep them accountable, but we don't have an accountability mechanism for them. So it's not, it's hard to kind of hear words that we just don't have the substance behind the words, because we don't actually have the accountability structure. And we are living in Ypsilanti, we are living in a police state. We have 5 different police jurisdictions policing us at all times. If you live downtown, I mean, I'm on the east side and it's just sirens all day long, but I'm in downtown quite often. It's never stops. We have, it's not just police, of course, it's EMS, but it's largely the police all day, all night. The police are not helping reduce violence. None of the data shows that. None of the data even shows, or even the national news shows, that they can even prevent horrible, atrocious things from happening. Uvalde, there was all of this police response, so many children died. There's no correlation between having more police and creating more community safety. There just isn't. So I largely agree with Desiree that we need to start shifting our strategy and start to have the difficult conversations to do that. Of course, it's not going to happen overnight, but with conversations like these and bringing in people who have stakes in this issue, like yourself, Tyrone, you said, you know, your experience, to actually discuss what would be needed to produce safety and well-being for our youth, for people most impacted by violent crime in Ypsilanti, and to address police and police violence. The police and government have a monopoly on violence. Yes, there's incidents of violence in our community, but that are not a part of the police, but the police have a monopoly on violence. And so most people operate with a certain level of, you know, awareness and apprehension around police interactions. And police have weapons. So things happen, and people have been killed by Ypsilanti Police Department officers here, by the Ann Arbor Police Department, by the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. It happens routinely. So yeah, I am interested in discussing strategies with people, but also before that, even talking just in big town halls like this to even understand what the issues are, and then to start about strategies. And I just want to mention, like, some of the ones that I know about are to build up the community through making people feel safe in their housing. So having housing that people can afford, you know, the healthcare system, jobs, mental health support, but even, I would say, yeah, harm reduction. So there's a lot of policing of communities based on drugs and paraphernalia, and that is something that doesn't actually help people, but just gets them caught up into the court system and the cycles that spit them out. And I have peers and friends that are working within the criminalized economies of survival. So they have to participate in criminalized economies to get by, to pay their rent, to feed themselves. And they're at high risk. And these are people that I love and care about in Ypsilanti. And they're constantly at risk of being swept up in the court system and involved with police just to get by. And so we need to do something transformative. We need to start it here in Ypsilanti because we can do it.
All right, Mr. Chance.
Yeah, so I'll try to remain calm. This is an issue that really gets me worked up a little bit, because, you know, the girl that was abducted was actually dumped off at the home of one of our city staff. So I own the brewery in Depot Town, and Depot Town's right next to Frog Island. And obviously there are a lot of people that, you know, do drugs and things. There's a lot of houseless people that, you know, that live out there, at least for part of the day. And we are literally the only place where they are allowed to come in Depot Town. And that does bother me, because if it's 20 degrees outside, how can you tell someone they have to be outside? It's nuts. And I believe in harm reduction. We, to my knowledge, are the only place with sharps bins in our bathrooms. You know, people thought it would attract drug users. It doesn't. Nobody does drugs because there's a sharps bin. We also have Narcan. Nobody ODs because they know you have Narcan. That's not a thing. So I agree that there has to be community responsibility and the shared responsibility of helping to take care of one another. You know, government doesn't grow out of the wild, right? We are trying to organize a society, and that comes with responsibilities. And we do have responsibility to take care of one another at some basic level. We might disagree where that level is, but we have a responsibility. So I'm with that. But, you know, it was mentioned that, you know, the little girl would still have gone through her trauma and all. That's very true. But what about the next one if you don't catch this person? for the last 2 years, I and some other folks from the county, from Ypsi Public Schools, from the Sheriff's Department, Supreme Felons, was doing an amazing work at talking to some of these young guys in particular who are, prone to violence for various reasons. One, just because of who they run with, and also because they have been victimized in some way, or they have witnessed someone close to them be shot and killed, and we know that they are more likely to act on revenge. They've been doing amazing work. Sure Moms been doing great work supporting the mothers, both the victims and I don't want to call them perpetrators because you're a victim no matter what side of the gun you're on. There is this wraparound work. However, we are in triage mode right now. We do have to, and it took some time for me to change my thinking on this as well. We do have to address the longer term issues, but we are in triage mode. There is an acute crisis and we have to get a handle on it. Some light. This past fall, I guess, I went to the funeral of a 17-year-old boy who was shot and killed. And one of the things that frightens me when people talk about having broad community discussions about things like this that really are concentrated among certain groups of people in certain areas. And I grew up on the South Side too. I grew up on Monroe Street. I remember a couple years where we weren't allowed to leave our yard after school. So the problems have been concentrated there for quite some time. And they are again. And when you open things up to public dialogue, two things happen. One, the people who are most affected, because they're in the minority, are going to have their voices drowned out. We've seen that happen. Or they'll be forced to relive their trauma in order to educate another group. Speaking as a Black man and speaking on behalf of my constituents now, our trauma is not for the benefit of your education. Pick up a book. So the premise that we can just do without police because you have ideas about it, because you have the privilege of being able to take safety for granted, it does irk me a little bit. And I'm a pacifist. Don't own a gun and never will. I don't believe that police should be armed in general. But the work has to be done. And all the data do show, and I'm interested if anyone has statistical information about this to the contrary, but all the academic information that I know, there's a consensus around this. There's a McCrary study in 2002, Evans and Owens 2007, Charlton and McCrary 2018, Mello 2019, Weisburst 2018, Sherman and Wise-Bird 1995, Datella and Chargovsky 2004. There are more. All the academia show that there is a correlation between crime reduction and increased numbers of police. Now, how much of that benefit is accrues to Black residents? That's very much up for debate. Absolutely. And most of the benefit tends to be in violent crime, not necessarily property crime. So there are caveats to that, obviously. But if there's any other information, I would definitely like to know. But the fact of the matter is, yes, we do have to worry about these systemic issues, and no one would benefit from that, more than I would. But we have a problem right now. I don't want to go to another funeral for a teenager. And thankfully, over the last 18 months, we have been able to reduce crime. Nobody sleeps in the bathtub at New Park Ridge anymore. And it's sad that that's a benchmark, but it's real. We had residents sleeping in the bathtub because of all the bullets coming through their house. You can go through there. There was bullet holes through the siding. You can't fix that with a social worker. And yes, police do awful things sometimes. And, you know, it was brought up that, you know, we want police to do X, Y, and Z differently. But it sounds like to me, as a Black person, is Black people want police to treat them like they treat white people. And frankly, I don't find that to be too much to ask. As for the accountability piece, yeah, I voted for resource allocation to my constituents to make sure that we had bare minimum of police officers, and we still didn't get them, but we had enough at the time to deploy a 3-man community-oriented policing crew. And they spent most of they didn't have to go on road patrol. They spent most of their time in New Parkridge, talking to people, doing cookouts for the kids. And we saw things getting reported more often, and crime has come down, not just because of that, but also because of the work of Shore Moms, also because of the work of Supreme Felons, and a lot of other community members on the ground. It takes all of it. We have to do everything, because our kids are worth us doing everything. So yeah, I mean, police can't prevent a crime like that before it happens, you know? But what about the next victim? We do have to get this person separated from society for some time. So how are we going to do that? We're not going to go out and find them ourselves. And yeah, police do bad things. They separate families sometimes. That's true. Those are all the bad things. But social workers also do that, especially in the Black community. You know, everyone's instinct is don't call the police, don't call CPS, because we know what happens when you do. And we all, you know, if you're a Black person, you know you have to do that calculus before you call, because I've called the police for an incident at my house. And yeah, we waited 3 hours, 5 hours. We had to get a hotel because somebody was threatening to kill us in our house. He later took his own life in the township. But there was no one to respond to the call. Someone had to leave the station to come out and take the call. Then there was no one at the station. That is not adequate. And that is not good enough resource allocation for my constituents.
All righty then. I wish we could have a longer conversation and have these conversations on an ongoing basis, because, you know, it's educational. And I know everybody's short in time. And I would like to actually give y'all an opportunity to mention some about y'all campaign, because I know Michelle has to go soon. And I know that everybody else, I mean, y'all been rolling with me for about an hour and a half now. So, and I really appreciate y'all time. And I wanted to tell everybody on there before they left that from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate y'all for even wanting to serve. How would I know? I ran for office. I ran for mayor of Ypsi. I ran for city council, Ward 1, more than 4 or 5 times. I fell on my face several times. I know the battle wounds. I know the campaign lies inside out. And honest to God, one situation don't fit every angle of Ypsilanti. One community might not need police, but the other community definitely need police. They need police that are going to communicate with the residents. The community policing is what we need. We don't have that no more. We had it, but the watered down version, like we supposed to have, we don't have it. Y'all, Ypsi is always going to be a hard place to lead, because there's so much beauty in Ypsi, and it's so much of a gem, and it do needs that right person in those seats. Ward 1, Ward 3, and also behind the seat of the mayor. So we're going to take it on around the corner and give it Michelle a last little pitch here and tell us about your campaign real quick. How can people get a hold to you? I kind of feel empty because the other two candidates left, but please y'all bear with me. And go ahead, Michelle.
So you can reach me on my website, which is michelleking2022.com. My phone number is 734-657-1030. And you said say something else about our campaign? Or?
Whatever you'd like to say. The floor is yours.
Vote for me on November the 8th. I am on the ballot. I am, again, new at politics, but I am from Ypsilanti. I'm a lifelong resident. I am a mother, and I am doing this so I can be more relatable. I want to be somebody that is relatable. I don't want to be out of reach from my constituents. So vote for me on November the 8th.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you for coming on the show.
Thank you. And also, I am going to stay. I needed to pick my son up, but it sounds like we're ending, but he did come. He got a different ride. So I'll be here.
Awesome. All righty. Ms. Ashanti, please.
Thank you again for doing this. I've watched you. I've listened to some of your other shows. I'm new to your shows too in the last year. I think that we're all trying to get more information the last few years and trying to find it wherever we can. And I always find it useful when people feel relaxed enough just to spin their thoughts and see what comes out. So thank you. I really want to just be sure that people understand that I am dedicated, I follow logic, I am accessible, I will reach out to you, I will be your voice, and I think it's really important, informed decisions, transparency, and just really holding each other accountable. You know, that there's nothing wrong with having differentiating opinions. It's just how we go about doing it and respecting each other when we're all out here trying to do better for the city of Ypsilanti. So I would be just excited to sit on that seat in city council. And you can reach me at ashanteharrisipsy@gmail.com. I have a Facebook page, Ashante Harris Ipsy, and a website. You can see the pattern here that I'm going with, but reach out, ask me questions. I'd really love to have more conversations because I think the more we listen to others and going door to door and talking to people, both new to the city of Ypsilanti and that have been here. I mean, I graduated in the 80s and these people, you know, they were just doing things 20, 30 years even before that. I've learned a lot and I've changed some of my thoughts and opinions after speaking to people because I could feel where they're coming from and it made sense. And I could back it up. And I just think that's very important. To make decisions that you can share with others. And even if they don't agree with you, they can say, okay, I understand what she's doing. I don't agree with it, but she thought this through. She just didn't randomly, make a decision because I'm here to represent all the people in Ward 3. Thank you.
All right, Amber.
Thanks for having me on, Mr. Bridges. I just want to mention that so I'm a musician and sound engineer, and you ran for mayor in 2014, and I ran your sound for the candidates forum. So I remember,
really,
yeah, I remember that
amazing
day very well. So
amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, I am, interested in shifting power dynamics. I am interested from shifting top-down decision making to bottom-up decision making. And I believe that we have the tools to do this in Ypsilanti. We can put much more decisions that affect certain communities to vote by those impacted communities. we can do much more official, extensive surveying. I think there is a certain level of hubris when somebody assumes that they're speaking for their constituents based on their, feedback from social circles or a few neighbors. We really actually need to talk to everyone because there are no monoliths. Yes, there's polarizing issues and people do have much different opinions on it, but I don't want to assume that my belief system is what most people have. So I believe that we need to start shifting away the biggest decisions in our community, which is policing, which is how we distribute our resources, which is Water Street, which is our landlord monopolies, and we need to start involving issue stakeholders, and everyone is that conversation. And we can do that with citywide ballot voting and other strategies. I do want to mention, Ypsilanti being such a dominated rental market has a few landlord monopolies, and they price fix the rental market. So they are the de facto regulators of rent in Ypsilanti. We have a planned economy. It is planned by 2 or 3 landlords. So I am interested in challenging those landlord monopolies so that people don't have to live in constant fear of houselessness. Ypsilanti Public Schools, community schools, has a 26% homelessness rate among their students. That is messed up. That is 1 in 4 children in Ypsilanti community schools. That the city government isn't doing anything, isn't inert, isn't neglectful, is awful. And so I'm someone that has been doing work on the city level for a number of years now, and I've been very effective at both raising up issues that people are not talking about as well, and then also bringing that into decision making and material changes. And so I'm interested in actually harnessing collective power on the community level to change some of these horrible dynamics we have in Ypsilanti. And the people here are worth it. So my campaign is called Amber Fellows for the People of Ypsilanti. It is a movement campaign, so if you're interested, you can get involved. You can contact me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. I have a website, amberforthepeople.com. You can communicate with us there. You can join our campaign. And I would be so thrilled to meet more people through this process so we can tackle the issues that affect so many of us. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chance, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, if there's another one, let me know. This was an interesting conversation. Yeah, if you need to reach out to me, you can go to bjcforypsilanti.com. I will not be appearing on your ballot. I'm a write-in candidate for the 4-year city council term. And again, I'm running because there's work to be done and I've got the tools to do it. We've got a lot more to do on housing affordability. We've got about 400 new units if you include North Washington. Coming up, we've got some other complex developments that have been proposed, and I happen to be a real estate broker, and dealing with these people can be tricky. And speaking the same language definitely helps when you need to get what the residents want. There's also more work to be done on our zoning, like I mentioned, and that will probably be very dramatic. There's work to be done on safety for Ward 1 residents, particularly on the south side. There's work to be done with some problematic business owners on the south side. Won't mention names, I guess. There's also work to be done on economic justice. We need to make sure that our minority business community especially thrives. We need to be sure that they have as much access to the dollars that folks in downtown and Depot Town have. We need to make sure that our housing, our planning, and our urban development policies are equitable in the face of a lot of this positive change that we're making, so that we don't repeat some of the mistakes of the past. this is a consequential election. There's a lot on the line for Ward 1, and we can't afford to forfeit our future or slow our progress. So write me in on November 8th or before.
All righty. I think the city of Ypsilanti will benefit star they select on that ballot. I think all of y'all are stars in my book. I appreciate y'all. And once again, Godspeed on y'all campaign. And when y'all talk to folks in the community, and y'all said y'all been interviewed by Tyrone Bridges on I Thought Y'all Knew, how would y'all tell him? Would y'all tell him it's a hard interview, or brother just, he has passion for his city? Good. All right. All right.
Definitely passion for your city.
All right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And thank y'all once again. When y'all get elected, when election is over, I'd like to invite you back on the show and do a one-on-one. And let's talk more about your mission and also what you hope to bring to the city. And I appreciate you wonderful people for running once again. And thank you for coming on our show. God bless.
Thanks for having me.
us.
Thanks
All
for
right.
having us.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.